Hello there, Philip.
Hello. Hello, Ros.
Philip, it's so nice to be talking with you, and we get the pleasure of having lots of lovely conversations with each other. But for those of you who don't, those people listening that don't yet really know who you are, because we send these out to our mailing list,
Hmm.
Philip Carr-Gomm is an amazing person, and he's had a very big impact on many, many people through his work with Druidry, which is really fascinating. And I think I hear gaining in popularity at the moment.
Hmm.
And actually, there's a really great podcast out by David Bramwell on Spotify called Adventures in Utopia, which Philip was just a guest on. And this podcast series is so brilliant, it's so inspiring, and it's sponsored by the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. So I think it's a great way of people who might have funny ideas about what Druidry is to get
Hmm.
familiar with it. So Philip is a key member of Druidry, and he's also a psychologist and an author, and he's here today to talk to us about his latest book, which is wonderful, The Gift of the Night. And it ties in with our theme of the month, which is the Yew Tree, which is rest, obviously, because this is a book about sleep. But it's not just any old book about sleep. It's looking at sleep in a very different way, one that is very relevant to the ACER community. And with that, I will hand over to you, Philip. Thank you for being with us. Please tell us all about this book and why it's so relevant to the ACER community.
Okay, well, lovely. Okay, so thank you, Ros. The book is really about how to approach insomnia if you have difficulties sleeping. But half of the book is also a kind of tour of sleep difficulties in general. It's called Almost Everything You Wanted to Know About Sleep. And it's lots of things about sleepwalking, sleep talking, sleep phobia, revenge sleep procrastination, exploding head syndrome, and all sorts of interesting things like that. And then the first half of the book, though, is a 6-step program that I've developed for helping people who have difficulty either going to sleep or maintaining their sleep through the night, who find themselves waking up in the middle of the night. And the particular sort of feature of this approach is an integrative. It's an integrative approach. So what I really did is I trained in CBTI, which is CBT for insomnia, and that's the method that your GP, your doctor will recommend to you if you come to them with sleep problems. And it has a very high success rate, about 70%, which is very impressive. But a lot of people don't like its approach and describe it as sometimes even brutal. It can be pretty tough and doesn't suit everybody. And I asked myself, what if we could take the best aspects of CBT and combine it with alternative approaches, which tend to be gentler? There's almost a sort of yin yang thing going on there, where the alternative approaches like yoga nidra, sophrology, hypnotherapy are gentler ones. Um, and I thought, what if we took the best of both and put them together and see what we get? So it's got an integrative approach. And then as I developed the program, a really helpful insight, I think, for me was realizing that the model we use in psychedelic therapy, that basic one of setting, and medicine, then you get those three things right. And was when I realized that sleeping, it's like taking psychedelics, and as much as psychedelic therapy is getting somebody from an ordinary state of consciousness to a very extraordinary state and back again in a safe and the best possible way. And that's sort of what we're doing every night. We're going from an ordinary state of consciousness to a very odd state where we have strange dreams and so on, and then we come back down again. And then people are having difficulty along here. So how can we help that journey? So rather than talking about sleep hygiene, which is what your doctor or your CBT therapist will talk to you about, which I think is rather insulting, because if somebody starts to talk to you about sleep, it suggests that until you talk to them, you were somehow being unhygienic and grubby. So I think it's rude. And setting people grasp it straight away. So the program really takes you through a process of getting the set right. And the set is mindset and heart set. And how we think about sleep and what we know about sleep really can affect our sleep One would think that that's just conceptual and not really important, but it actually really does affect our sleep. So it's getting the way we think about it right and the way we feel about it right. And then when you've got that set right, you do the setting part, which is the sort of standard sleep hygiene stuff that lots of people know about, and no blue light, in the evening, too late in the evening, and getting the bedtime right and the bedroom right, and all those sorts of practical things. So then you're ready to go, kind of thing. You're lying there and you're ready to go. And then the question is, well, how am I going to take off? And that's the medicine bit. So then the question is, well, what medicines can you offer me to go to sleep? And in the second half of the book, I run through, cannabis, psychedelics, microdosing, EMDR, what sort of things can we do? And I've boiled down the sort of 13 most promising ones, I think, are the CBT, which I sort of deal with, and then I go on to 12 other methods, which are drawn mainly from sort of alternative sources. And they are ways to help you get to sleep, and they include, sophrology and so on, and hypnotherapy. And then I run through scripts for some of them. And then in the audiobook version, there's the advantage of actually having them spoken in a soporific voice. But there are scripts are there for you to record yourself or to read. And then there's a final step, which sort of could be anywhere, but I put it at the end, which is ritual. And ritual in the sense of routine, used in the sense of routine, because our body really likes routine. And if we're taking a spiritual perspective, then we can bring our spirituality into that ritual as well.
Well, and I was thinking when I was looking at this, I think it's such an ingenious way of structuring it. And especially what you were saying about the story that we have about sleep being so important, because we know that the story we have about a psychedelic experience is so important that the framework we have for understanding it will so impact the way the experience unfolds. So and how we understand, how we make of what happens, and how we're kind of helps us build resilience, like building stories that help us become more resilient to it and be more positive towards things, and less feel less hopeless about setbacks, because when we have these stories around it and understanding it, it's like knowledge is power. I think it's
absolutely
really important. So I really love the framework of the prep, the set and setting. I also like mindset and heart set. That's very nice. Mindset, heart set, setting, and medicine. But then I was thinking at the end, where you have the rituals that you talk about here, that's kind of the integration a bit. That could also be could be prep, mindset, heart set, setting, medicine, and then the integration at the end, because creating those rituals is how you keep going with it, how you maintain your sleep practice in an ongoing way by bringing in new elements and grounding it in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it fits really well, I think. Yes. And integrating your sleep life, it's really interesting. If you set a group of people down, I worked with a group of managers of a bakery and cafe chain, and we all sat around with a glass of wine one evening, and they locked the cafe up, and I just went around and asked them to tell their sleep story. And we did 2 rounds. And the first round, you'll get some people say, "Oh, I don't have any trouble sleeping at all," and then somebody would say, "Well, I always fall asleep on the sofa, and then I drag myself to bed, and I wish I didn't have to do that," and so on. Another round, and even the people who say they're sleeping well start to say, "Well, actually, my partner snores and wakes me up, and every night I think about going down the corridor and sleeping in another room." And the lady who was curling up on the sofa and falling asleep admitted that she was actually frightened to go to sleep and to go to bed because of her story, and so on. So you start to open it out. It's a very interesting way in, even with friends, actually. It's a very interesting way into a deeper conversation. I have a friend who's a GP in Glasgow, and he said he developed this acronym, which is SAFE. And he said he found that when he saw a new patient in the clinic, he would start off by asking them about their sleep. How are you sleeping? What's it like? And people are seem to be pretty good about opening up around that. Then he'd move on to alcohol. How much do you drink? You know, F, food, E, exercise. And if you get in the wrong order, if you go straight in with, how much do you drink or how much you exercise, people throw up the defenses. But start off with sleep as your entry point in, yeah.
You make the point in the book of how much time we spend in our beds at night sleeping, and we know now how important it is for our health overall and the length of our lives, and so
exactly. And one of the things that's interesting, I think, is how many psychotherapists don't know much about sleep and don't necessarily ask their clients about sleep. Because you can have a client who comes to you, and so I always try to ask early on. I mean, there may be cases where it's sort of not, just doesn't feel right, and I don't go there. But almost inevitably, I will say fairly early on, in the first or second session, how's your sleep? How are you sleeping? And you will get such. I had one client who came because he was experiencing depression, couldn't get up and didn't want to get out of bed in the morning, had lost his mojo and really wanted to, and we talked, and I asked him about his sleep habits and patterns. And basically we identified that he was an owl trying to be a lark. In other words, his normal way before he had this problem, he would go to bed around midnight, 1 a.m, wake up around 9 or 10, and he was fine. His girlfriend, often we pair, rather interesting little detail is we tend to pair with our opposite. So larks and owls are often couples. And of course, that makes sense from an evolutionary point of view, because, from sort of childcare, that makes a lot of sense for a lark and an owl to come together.
Absolutely, yeah.
So and then so when we hook up with somebody who's the opposite, we want to go to bed together at the same time. That's natural. And so he was trying to fit in with her and go to bed at a kind of reasonable bedtime, sort of 10 o'clock or whatever you would think. And so we talked around that, and I just suggested that luckily he was in a job where he had control over his time. It becomes difficult when you don't, you have to get up at 6 a.m. for whatever, but he could get up late. So I said, okay, just try until we meet again, try going to bed, midnight, 1 a.m., when you would. And, the next session I had with him, it was a fortnight later, he said, I'm not waking up I'm feeling okay. I want to get out of bed. I'm kind of, so I think it's really, really good to know this. I think all therapists, psychotherapists should know about sleep, if only for that reason, because there's this interesting bidirectional relationship with depression. When you look at depression, people who suffer from depression either tend to sleep too much and always feel tired, and they'll sleep 12 hours a day and still don't feel good, or they'll suffer from insomnia. And it's it's worth exploring their relationship with sleep.
Yes, absolutely. And especially when there are some things you can do about it, because I've always felt a bit kind of, there's a slight sense of, because sleep is so important, and because sometimes sleep issues can be so entrenched. And when I trained as a clinical psychologist, it was kind of CBT approaches, and that's just one approach. And as you said, and you make a point, you made a point in a previous conversation that CBT can be quite, I can't remember the way you say it, but it's like not allowing. How do you phrase it, Philip?
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is interesting. So CBT, in the program that I've developed, I use everything that it uses, except, funnily enough, the two key techniques that it uses, which is sleep restriction and I've forgotten the other term they use for the other. But basically, it's the basic CBT thing is that you tell people if they're not asleep within 10 to 15 minutes, they should get out of bed. Because it's based on the Pavlovian idea of stimulus and response, and the idea is you get the client associating the bed and the bedroom only with sleep. So don't eat in bed, don't watch telly in bed, don't read in bed. You can only have sex in bed or sleep in bed, and the idea is that you associate. Straight away we see a problem that I've asked my CBT trainer about this, and he said, well, actually you've homed in on the flaw to this theory, which is that sex isn't a very soporific, it's a very exciting thing. And so you're pairing, if you just only do sex and sleep in the bed, that's a confusing thing because you're pairing it with sleep and with sex. And he said, you're right. You know, some people say you shouldn't even do sex in bed, only associations, and that way. So there's a problem with it there. And of course, you know, so when you're running through a program, you're lying in bed, not able to get to sleep, and you're told to not think about it and relax and all the rest of it. But how easy is it to say, oh, it must have been 10 minutes now, surely. Oh God, it's 15. I've got to get out of bed. And then you've got to climb out of bed in a cold flat, you know, and potter around and read a book in another room until you feel safe, and then get back in again. And then sleep restriction is even more sort of draconian. It's where you say basically, you know, how many hours sleep do you get? Well, I only sleep for 5 hours. How long do you stay in bed? Well, 8 hours. You know, okay, you can only stay in bed for 5 hours, and it will give you half an hour extra. You can only stay in bed. So if you've got to get up at 6, you can't get into bed till, you know, whatever it is, 12:30 or 1:30 or something. So and everybody feels absolutely ghastly doing this routine. And then, you know, after 2 weeks or something, that, you know, you gradually extend it and so on. So they're disallowing. They're basically saying, don't do that. So the approach in my thing, and also in the ACT ACT approach to therapy, you flip it around and you make it an allowing approach. So the reason I've called it the gift of the night is because when you have insomnia, the night tends to become something that you don't look forward to. And night becomes a kind of hell, you know, for people who suffer from severe insomnia, because they've got to get through it, tossing and turning and all the rest of it. So the flip around there, or the reframe there, is to say, you know, you want me time. You know, the idea of a retreat is just bliss, and you want time for yourself because life is so demanding and stressful. And I say, well, actually, every day you get 8 hours of me time. And so, you know, the night is your retreat time, and you can do anything you like there. So you can try out different meditation techniques. You can make playlists of composers you've never got around to listening to because you haven't got the time. You know, there's like you can learn a language. There's like loads of stuff you can do. You can do the relaxation routines that are in the book and so on. So it's allowing. It's a permissive approach. And you know, and also stressing the fact that even if you're not asleep, your body is resting, and good things are happening to it.
Beautiful.
And you know, and I think the thing is, CBT arose out of behavioral psychology, which arose originally out of Pavlov's work. And of course, it's true that we are stimulus response sort of mechanisms at one level. But if you take a different understanding of the human, if you take, say, a transpersonal approach, and you say, yes, we are animals, we are bodies that work with stimulus and response, but we're also souls. You know, we have hearts and souls that have different needs as well. Well, what is a sort of heartfelt approach to insomnia that can allow that sort of much gentler and richer and more nurturing kind of approach to the problem of not getting to sleep at night, you know?
I love that way of thinking about it, also because if you think about the polarity of light and dark, and the kind of go of bright lights, and the kind of more yang energy, we could call it, and the kind of there's something about the darkness and the more yin. It's like the sun and the moon. We have these two polarities in our life, and there's something around that, the darkness. Maybe you could associate it as well with the kind of deep feminine, something slowing down and resting, that the dark half of the day, the dark half of the year represents. And how in our culture we're so focused on the light half and productivity and being so busy and being always, you know, productive, which is what the lights allow. But the dark half is the time when that softer soul quality, the kind of candlelight, something softer, and not about what you can achieve or do, but something about resting in that deeper, darker time, and making friends with that, I think, is a really powerful thing. Easy for me to say, though, having not suffered from insomnia. So it's easy for me to feel that, like you talk about a retreat, for me, I love nothing more than lying in a kind of dark room and listening to something, some music, or having some time to read. If I have any time in bed before I fall asleep, it's an absolute luxury, because usually I go to sleep when I'm so tired, but so I love nothing more than the retreat of my kind of dark bedroom. But I know from friends that have insomnia that it's a very, very different, it feels like a very different place for them. So yes, imagining that making friends with that kind of cave, you know, being in that place, it being a cave of the heart rather than a place of doom, it
Yeah.
feels important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, your thing about the sort of light and dark is absolutely right. If you want to see the sort of the extremes that people will go to, there's a section in the second half of the book on sleep hacking. And sleep hacking, it basically comes out of exactly that. It says, you know, we spend a third of our lives asleep. You know, I don't want to spend a third of my life asleep. How can I manipulate my body so they develop these extraordinary schedules of, you know, you sleep for an hour, you know, wake up and then stay awake for 2 hours, have a 20-minute nap, sleep, you know, stay awake for 3 hours. And they all have spooky names like the Dymaxion schedule and the Uberman 250 schedule and all the. And in the book, I say, you know, the titles say it all, really, you know, and you know, you only should hack your sleep if you're going to row around the world on your own in a boat, and then you need to develop really odd ways of sleeping. But otherwise, it's coming from this sort of hubris of the conscious mind of thinking you don't need the unconscious, you know, and that nothing's happening when you're asleep. And it's not true. There's like amazing stuff happening, you know, while you sleep, like repairing cells and doing rather important things like that, processing emotions that haven't been processed during the day, and, you know, a whole load of stuff. Yeah.
I love one of the practices. So in the book, there are 13. So yes, thinking of your psychedelic prep medicine framework, for the medicine, choosing your medicine, you've listed 13 ways to get to sleep, which we won't go through all of them now, but you just mentioned about kind of processing the day. And one of the exercises I'm really going to practice is the day review, where you go through, where you describe how at the end of the day, when you're lying in bed, you go through the day that you've just had in reverse order. So you go from what you had from supper, going all the way down to breakfast. So and it sounds like that's a really nice way of, you make the point, don't do it if you've had a really difficult day,
Yeah.
but that for days where they feel like, you know, kind of a standard day where it's felt kind of good, that maybe some learnings can be consolidated, and then you don't have to do that processing at night. In a way, it might. Have you? I think you've said in the book that you tried this one yourself. Is this one?
Yeah, I use it. I use it a lot. You know, so yes, like you sort of go back and you get, you know, because, you know, I tend to kind of rush through life. That's just the way, you know, and I think a lot of us probably do, you know. And so to sort of lie in bed and think, you know, oh yeah, that film that we just watched on the sofa, you know, that was really rather nice, wasn't it? Why, you know, why did I like it? Oh yeah, it was sweet because, you know, whatever, you know. And then, or that documentary, you know, and what did I take away from that? And you can sort of linger or not, depending on how you're feeling. You know, you don't have to go into great detail, or you can if you want to. What did I learn from that documentary I just watched? Or you can just remember, oh yeah, we watched the documentary on that, whatever, you know. And then you go back to the meal and you can kind of enjoy the meal again. Oh yeah, that was great, wasn't it? It was delicious. Yeah. Okay. And then you just go back through the day. And usually I'm gone at some point. You know, but if I happen to make it all the way to breakfast and waking up that morning, you know, then I see if I can carry on into the previous day, you know. You know,
Yeah.
and I didn't know it at the time. I think I just kind of developed it myself, but I've later learned that Rudolf Steiner recommends it as a sort of way of, you know, and it kind of figures, doesn't it? It makes sense that you're doing some of that processing that, as you said, would normally take place during the night. That you do it consciously, you know.
Make the point in the book as well that it ties in really nicely with the gratitude practice, which we've been
Yeah,
doing.
totally.
And that, yeah, this is one for carrying that. We do it in our hazel tree in September, but this is something to maybe do every day. If we're doing a day review, then bringing gratitude, weaving the gratitude through it
into that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, as I said, we won't go through all of them, but sophrology is one that people might be interested in hearing a tiny, because I know you've written a lot about sophrology. and it's a practice that you're very, you've trained in it. Could you give us a little tiny, and actually, if you could maybe give us like a tiny, tiny 1 minute
Yeah.
description of two of them, sophrology, and then we'll end with yoga nidra, because that's going to tie us into the yew tree. So
Oh, cool.
perfect, and then yoga nidra.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the sophrology one, it's the one exercise in the 13 that is not done before as you lie in bed and go to sleep. You do it during the day, and it's a programming exercise. It's what the way with the way the mind, the way the nervous system works is it can't differentiate between reality and fantasy. So you get the same reactions as we know if we think about something exciting, or we think about eating a lemon or something, and our body reacts as if we really are. So it's based on that principle, and the principle of neuroplasticity, of forming new pathways in the nervous system. And so what you do is there's a particular sophrology induction, which is a sort of like 3 or 4 5 minute sort of routine of physical movement and breathing and so on, that gets you, sort of drops you down from a sort of beta to an alpha brainwave state, deeply relaxed state. And then you essentially run a movie in your head of what you'll be doing this evening, and you imagine yourself brushing your teeth and getting into bed and lying down, and you see yourself going to sleep and having the most delicious night. And then the sort of fast forward the movie, you see yourself sleep, delicious sleep, and then you see yourself waking up in the morning, and you can identify with yourself. You can sort of go into your body as it, and or you can sort of watch it like a movie. It doesn't matter, however you do it. Or I do a bit of both, and you waking up feeling all fresh and marvelous in the morning, and then you come out, and then there's a sequence to come out of the induction. It's slightly like a kind of auto hypnosis state. Come out of it, and that's a 10-minute exercise that you do. And in the sleep program, I suggest that you do that once a day for a week or two, something like that. And so what you're doing is, in psychology, it's called rehearsal. You're essentially rehearsing the evening, the thing in advance. And so what happens is you essentially start to act it out. In other words, lo and behold, a few hours later, you're brushing your teeth, you're lying down, and you're going to sleep. And it sounds terribly simple, and it is, in a way. It is simple, but people really do find it helpful. And there's a little sort of nuance you can give it to it, where as you lie in the bed, you have one word that's a trigger word that help, like sleep or calm, and you sort of repeat it to yourself as you're lying there, and you drift off, and you sense yourself drifting off beautifully and then waking up. So you're rehearsing, the right behavior, as it were, for your body and your mind. So that's the sophrology technique. And then what was the other one?
Yoga nidra.
Yoga nidra. Okay. Well, yoga nidra, the reason why yoga nidra can be so good with getting you to sleep is because it's the one meditation technique that I've come across that you can be totally passive to. Lots of meditation techniques require you to do something like to concentrate on your breathing, or to repeat a mantra or something like that. This one, you just whack on. I mean, you can do it yourself, but actually the most effective way is to just put an audio recording on. And there's a voice, and there's a whole range. You can find loads of them on YouTube, and and I do 12 on my website. I've got 12 that and so lots of them. And you find the voice that works for you, and the sort of person who presents them in the right sort of pacing that works for you. And then they essentially draw your attention to different parts of your body, and then get you to move your attention around your body, and the little sort of tricks like imagining a blue starlight or whatever. But it's essentially moving your focus around your body. And there are these pilgrimage routes around the various different ways you can go. And there's something incredibly soporific about that for a start. So you follow it around like that. And then if you're not asleep by then, the process carries on, because then the voice will suggest that you experience opposites. So they'll say, imagine you're sitting by a fire and you're getting really hot and warm. And now you're sitting, in a fridge, and you're absolutely freezing, and you're really, really cold. Sounds awful, but it works. Or imagine you're lying on top of a mountain. Now imagine that you're lying at the bottom of a valley, you know. Now see if you can imagine both at the same time. I think the one that I tend to use is imagine you're as light as a feather, then imagine you're as heavy as a stone. And then see if it's possible to imagine both at the same time. You're as heavy as a stone, you're as light as a feather.
I'm doing it now.
Well, what can happen is if you do that after you've done the journey around the body, it's almost like your conscious mind says, oh, I can't cope with this. I'm going to uncouple. I'm going to sort of decouple, you know, and you're off. You know, if you still happen to be awake, then you move into a phase of where you start to focus and you imagine your breath, you know, sort of moving from the palm of the sole of your foot all the way up to the top of your head and all the way down again. You know, so it's a long. If you haven't gone to sleep, you will definitely be in an altered state of consciousness. And it's one of the most powerful ways, I think, to alter consciousness. I mean, if you do a yoga nidra in the morning after you've had a good night's sleep and you've drunk a black coffee or something like that, you can have the most amazing experiences because you're fully conscious, but you've gone so deep with these three phases, basically.
Wow. And I remember listening to some of your yoga nidras from your website before, and I fell asleep. So, I mean, yeah, I didn't get to the end of any of them because I fell asleep really, really quickly. Philip, thank you so much. And it's really, it's wonderful because, oh yeah, I said I was going to link it to the Yew Tree. So some of the yoga nidra techniques are, just a few of them are a little bit woven into the Yew tree journey. I like imagining, because the yew tree has such a lovely kind of nest at the heart of it, those old ancient yew trees. And I like to imagine kind of climbing into the yew tree and curling up in the middle of it and being under the starry sky and under the moon and being in a kind of ancient churchyard. That for me feels like a kind of safe place to snuggle in and fall asleep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the yew tree journey is kind of, yeah, slightly yoga nidra-ish. And I hope that this month for people, we have lots of new people joining ACER this month. We have a whole new group of people starting. And for them, we're starting with rest. We're starting with the Yew Tree. And we feel it's so nice to start with rest, because often when we start like a new program or something, it's kind of all full on and everything's busy. But it's like, no, we start with slowness and quiet and doing as little as possible. And there's a lot going on in the world right now, which means that we need to take as much time as we can to rest. And many people's sleep will be much more disturbed right now than it is normally. So I think.
Well, exactly. It reminds me of, I've forgotten his name, you know, but the clinical psychologist who talks about the times are urgent, so we must slow down. You know, that's
yes,
it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think the timing of your book is really wonderful, and I hope that people have some good sleep this month and that they get something from your book. If they get it, they should get it. I think it's a very good book to have, because if we don't have sleep problems now, then someone we know might have sleep problems, or at some point in the future it might change. So it's a good thing to have on the shelf in case we need it.
Over a third of adults experience sleep difficulties. So, I mean, the other thing I hope is that the second half of the book, I mean, I just find the subject is so extraordinary. I mean, you know, what on earth is exploding head syndrome? What is sexomnia? What is revenge sleep procrastination? They're all fascinating kind of aspects of human behavior, you know.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's a real gift, this book, and it's lovely to chat with you, Philip, as always. And we will speak again very soon.
Yes, we will. Yeah.
And other people that are listening to you for the first time that are on the mailing list, or people that have just joined, Philip graces us every 6 weeks through the Wheel of the Year, where you can hear Philip talking all about the time points of the year that we're at through the Celtic calendar. And we're a day away from a very important one. Philip, just give us one tiny half minute on Samhain.
Well, you know, yes, we're going into, it's the end of a cycle, really. You know, all the letting go that really started with the summer solstice, when the days started to grow shorter from June the 21st. And then, you know, we wouldn't have even noticed that because we're in summertime and we don't notice it, but the days are actually getting shorter and the natural sort of energies are declining. We sort of notice it as we get around to the autumn equinox. Oh, the leaves are starting to turn golden and so on. Now they're starting to fall. and the sort of maximum point of sort of shedding, really, although it carries on till the winter solstice. But here at Samhain coming up, Halloween, it's the time where we let go so completely. It's symbolic of death as well, and we spend some time thinking about the people we've loved who've passed on, and all those questions of mortality. But it's also the ending of a cycle. So it's the opportunity to begin something new. So it's a good time to, and it's nice to begin with rest. As you say, it's kind of an unusual approach, but it fits with the seasonal journey that, you wouldn't have thought that November is the beginning of anything, but it actually is. And certainly in that old Celtic Druidic year, it marks the beginning of a new cycle. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Yes. Well, we're beginning a new cycle together now. And yeah, thank you, Philip. And see you.
Okay, thank you. And see you later. Yeah, okay, bye.